say girls are pearls, ladies are rubies, mothers are molders, and women are wonderful. With this thought, I, Priyanka, Assistant Professor, School of Law, Sharda University, welcomes you all to today's symposium on National Girl Child Day. Now, I would request our respected Dean Sir, Professor Dr. Pradeep Kulsreshta Sir, to say few words.
Thank you, Ms. Priyanka. It is my proud privilege to welcome Ms. Shweta Bharti, Senior Partner, Hammurabi and Solomon, a leading law firm of international repute. And it is our privilege that whenever we request ma'am, she takes out her precious time to devote her wisdom and guide us in this profession. And once we requested her, she traveled on, I think, about the International Women Day, and we awarded leading professionals. She was there, and then last year also she was there, and they were rather, one of the sponsors in our virtual mood court. And today again she is here on a wintry Sunday morning. Thank you very much, ma'am. I, on my own behalf and on behalf of the faculty, student management, and participants, welcome you in this symposium. And I'm sure that student and faculty they will gain a lot from your perspective on this issue. Basically, we are celebrating National Girls' Day today, and as far as details are concerned, ma'am shall speak. I'll tell you, in a school of law, we have around 75% faculty who are women, and we have close to 45% students who are girls. And I see this legal education empowers girls especially a lot. So I see them when they come to school 10 plus 2, and when they graduate, I see a lot of confidence in them, and they are confident, and they are I think they shall be change maker in times to come. But the flip side is whenever we go for moot court and this legal aid programs to surrounding neighboring areas, we find girls are still not given equal opportunities. And I remember in one of the school we went, the principal told that one girl was coming in eighth standard perhaps. Parents married her off. They were saying that we are not interested in higher education of that girl, and principal was feeling helpless that they could not intervene. So I think there is a lot of improvement. At the same time, a lot is to be done. And today I was reading that one district has started in Odisha that Aadhaar mandatory for marriage registration, so that child marriage can be controlled.
Correct.
So and we see that slowly with awareness, the girl child's missing girl child, the number is decreasing. Now people are understanding, respecting girl child also, but there is still lack of awareness in hinterlands.
True.
In urban areas, things have improved a lot. So I'm sure coming times we is shall be better with lot of laws coming in, lot of awareness program kicking in, and we all have a duty to help wherever in whatever way we can, so that the uh, quality of life for girl child is improved. Thank you very much, man, for sparing your
Thank you.
valuable time.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you so
sir,
much.
for your kind words. It is an honor for all of us that today, on this occasion, we have respected Shweta Bharti ma'am with all of us. Ma'am is senior partner at Hammurabi and Solomon Partners. It will not be justice. I will not be able to do justice to ma'am's profile in these few minutes, but to name some of her achievements, ma'am has the experience of almost 20 years in litigation in commercial and corporate matters as well as ADR. Ma'am is also part of subcommittee formed by Department of Law and Justice to advise Government of India on ways of curbing the delay in administration or dispensation of justice by the court. Ma'am is also jurisdictional council member for India as well as ex-chairman of Environmental Law Committee. Ma'am has also been the advising client on FDI, inbound as well as outbound, company formation, company liquidation, restructuring, etc. Thank you so much, ma'am, for sparing your valuable time with all of us. I again welcome you on the behalf of all the attendees and Sharda University. Thank you so much, ma'am, and over to you now.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your kind words. And it was very heartening to hear about your journey. So, congratulations to you too, from the student to becoming a faculty. And I think you are the torch bearer, and women like you are the torch bearer for the institution to understand that, what all can women achieve if they are determined to do so.
Thank you.
So I would want to start with one anecdote, and that is success is not final and failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. This is what Mr. Winston Churchill had said long back, and I think it still holds good. So, in a country like India, which is so diverse, which is so rich culturally, which has so much of vibrance, which has such deep rooted ethos and principles, it is a wonderful country. The country which worships women in the form of goddesses, Durga, the goddess of power, Saraswati, the goddess of knowledge, Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth. In such a country where women are worshipped as goddesses, what went wrong? When did it went wrong? And why did it go wrong? From when did this discrimination start that women were isolated? Women were discriminated. They were not given the equal opportunity. They were killed at the mother's womb. There was a need for a gender determination test to be conducted to ascertain whether it is a male or a female fetus. And in many parts of the country, why the sex ratio between male and female is so skewed is because of the fact that after the gender determination test, if it is found to be a female fetus, the pregnancy is terminated. So if that does not happen, and if the girl child survives, the challenges do not end there. That's the beginning of the challenge. That's the first step. They are not given the equal opportunity for education for various reasons. I mean, we have, because of India being such a large country, we have our own socio-economic challenges. So the parents may not be comfortable in sending their girls for education, co-education. The girls actually may not find basic facilities like toilets in the schools, and therefore they are not able to go, or that they are required at their homes to do the household work. So there are a lot of challenges. She is able to survive that, educate herself, and then now is the time for her marriage. That is when there is a demand for dowry. That in itself is a huge challenge for the parents to arrange for dowry for their children, for their daughters, for marriage. Then they take up the responsibility of going and working. There are so many challenges that they actually face. So if we look at the challenges at workplace, they're not given equal remuneration. There are sexual harassment issues. There are, challenges in relation to managing your family as well as managing your professional life. So there are challenges which do not end at any step for women. And that was the reason why probably the government of India also thought that it was necessary to develop some laws to be able to understand the situation and be able to curb the situation at the outset. If we look at the basic ethos of our Constitution of India, it provides for an equality before law for men and women both under Article 14. It categorically provides for non-discrimination on the basis of gender. It also categorically provides for special provision in favor of women and children. It also provides for equal rights to men and women so far as it concerns the livelihood, whether it is about employment opportunities. It also provides for various kinds of other facilities which have been inbuilt in the Constitution, And even after that being provided for under the Constitution of India, the discrimination against women has not stopped. There was a need for the legislature to form laws in relation to, and I'm going from the very basic, like from the birth to the tomb. Birth to the tomb, the kind of laws that have been actually developed for women, there are too many. Whether it is about medical termination of pregnancy, and we all know the reasons why there was a need for this kind of a law to be promulgated in 1971, or whether it is about a law in relation to preconception and prenatal diagnostic techniques regulation of 1994, so that we are able to save the female fetuses. There was a provision in 2006 in relation to Prohibition of Child Marriage Act. Prohibition of child marriage by way of the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act of 2006. Then there was also an inclusion of women in the Hindu Succession Act in 2005, where they were entitled to get the right or the share in their ancestral property. There were also laws which were made, or there were amendments in the IPC in relation to their personal safety in 2013 after the Nirbhaya case that had happened. There were provisions which were added under the IPC in relation to sexual harassment under section 354A, B, C, D. The new inclusion of stalking also as a criminal offense, voyeurism, which was, the punishment for voyeurism, which was expanded. So there was a more encompassing provision in relation to rape laws. There was a promulgation of Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act of 2012, which is POCSO. So personal safety rights, there are so many laws which were actually promulgated over a period of time. Has the life or condition or situation of women changed? So where are we going wrong? What is not being done right? Where is the gap? Probably all of us as a society need to understand and work on that. Because legislation in itself or legislating the laws in itself is not sufficient. It is the implementation of law which is the real challenge. And that is where probably the need is there for us to work and achieve and ensure the safety and protection of women. The basic reason why women are not able to push themselves in their careers are also, first, safety reasons, second, family obligations, and third, various other criteria which I'm not going into. So if we are able to provide a safe environment for women, they will be able to move out of their houses and be able to become professionals. Second is the responsibilities of their domestic, whether by way of a family, whether by way of children, as a mother, as a wife, there are so many responsibilities. If we are able to ensure that those are shared equally between the family members, between the husband and wife, between the in-laws, I think that will change the scenario for women quite a bit. Now the woman moves out of her house, goes to a job. Look at the challenge that she faces. She's not given equal remuneration. A lawyer in a law firm, if he is a male, will get X. If it is a female, will get Y. We try to understand, we do not have that practice in the firm, but we still try to understand what could be the reason for it. And there were some very interesting observations which came from people. One was that women have time constraints. They cannot sit till late. Second, they have their family obligations, so they take leave more often than men. I asked myself this question. Are all women concerned about safety because of herself or because of this kind of society that we are living in. Who is to contribute to it? When she has to ensure the safety within the confines of their organization itself, is she safe there? Are there issues of sexual harassment not happening? So those are the kind of challenges when you go into the professional life are also existing for women. The government promulgated a law in 1976, which was the Equal Remuneration Act. It very categorically provided that every employer who is under a legal obligation to pay the same wages for men and women if they perform the same work or work of a similar nature. Even if it is performed at different places, the salary has to be the same. The employer cannot discriminate against women while recruiting them unless there is a prohibition for women to join that profession. So whether it is about recruitment, whether it is about promotions, whether it is about training, whether it is about transfer, the employer is strictly prohibited from discriminating against women. And this happened in 1976. Has the discrimination still stopped? So there is another law which came in 2013, which was the sexual harassment at workplace. This was, why was there a need in the first place? When you're working in an organization, all of us are responsible for safety of each other, whether it is men or women. But there was a need which was felt for this kind of a law to be there, because when women was going out working in those organizations, she had to compromise at various levels for her promotion, for her salary, for her various other issues. And at that point of time, there was a need felt for a law like this to be promulgated, and which was an encompassing act. It spoke about unwelcome sexually tinted behavior, whether directly or by implications. It provided for a physical contact and advances to be also included in the definition of sexual harassment. Of course, it also included the demand or request for sexual favors, because that was also quite rampant in the organizations. Or making sexually colored remarks, or showing pornography, or any kind of unwelcome physical, verbal, or non-verbal conduct of sexual nature. And believe me, I'm sitting in a few committees of POSH in various organizations. The issues and concerns that existed prior to 2013 are still prevailing in our society. Now, because of the lacuna in the law in terms of the definition of workplace and various other issues, there are situations which are still being misused. Sexual harassment at workplace for women have not been done away with. There are still challenges, there are still harassments happening. So whose responsibility is it? It is for the people of the organization, individuals like us, who are responsible to ensure a safe working environment for women. So this is when it comes to professional life. Now look at another scenario, which is about your personal life, where a woman gets married. The series of challenges that she faces post her marriage necessitated the government to promulgate laws around it. When you get married, you leave your parental home. You live in the home that is provided to you by your husband or by your in-laws. That is what is called a matrimonial home. That is going to be the home in future for women. And therefore, it provides a legal obligation on the husband as well as the in-laws that the women entering the house will be given the shelter and the maintenance to have a dignified life, irrespective of whether she's a homemaker or she's a working woman. But what happens is when women are living within the confines of those marital homes, there are harassments which are caused for dowry. There are violences which are met out on her because she is perceived to be weak. And these were the circumstances which required certain laws to be promulgated. Women was given a right to maintenance for herself as well as her children. And the law actually imposed an obligation on the husband to provide maintenance to his wife. And in case, of course, he fails, there are provisions where you can approach the court of law and the court will then direct the maintenance to be provided. And what was the reason for doing that? That was only to ensure that a woman has a dignified, decent living, and which would include her cost of living, her shelter, her travel, her day-to-day requirements, her child's education, and various other extracurricular activities that the child would be involved in. The law also provided for the protection of women under the Domestic Violence Act. What are the kind of domestic violence which is included under this act? Beating, kicking, slapping, all of this is of course physical violence. What the law also includes under the domestic violence is the emotional violence, abusing, using derogatory words, making constant demands for dowry, constant humiliation within the confines of the house, or any kind of emotional violence which disturbs her well-being has been included under the provisions of the protection under the Domestic Violence Act. Of course, thereafter, the women gets the right to have a protection officer appointed, and there are safety nets which have been provided under the Act. She has a right to claim maintenance so that she has the ability to live a dignified life. She has a right to claim compensation in order to ensure that her financial requirements are adequately taken care of. There was also a promulgation of law called Dowry Prohibition Act, which had happened in 1961 and which categorically provided that dowry of any kind, whether by way of cash, jewelry, valuable, or any kind of movable, immovable property being demanded by the husband or the in-laws, were completely prohibited as a consideration for marriage. It was considered to be a serious offense. There were penal provisions around it. However, over a period of time, this law had substantially failed. I think in the late 90s and early 2000s, we have seen a lot of life getting lost because of this dowry harassment. And it is only of late that the government has become a little more serious about this. And therefore, the instances of dowry deaths have at least gone down. So, I mean, if you look at how the evolution of women has had challenges all through, whether as as a fetus, as a child, as an adult who has to get married, as a professional who has to work in the workplace, the challenges for women have been there constantly. And that is when I think when Dr. Kulshrestha mentioned that he has about 45% students who are women in his institution, it really gave, I really felt very happy about it, because this means that 45% of the institutions So out of the 50% of the gender that we actually are, 45% of the girl child are actually getting educated. Educated in a reputed institution, looking forward to a career. Looking forward to a career of repute to make a name for themselves. You will complete your education. You will come into the profession. What are the kind of challenges you are going to face? Many of you would be actually first generation lawyers. The first challenge would be entry level. You are able to get through an organization. You start working there. Like, let me talk about my journey. I came to Delhi in 1993. Did my education from Indraprastha College for Women. Did my BCom honors from there. Did not face too many challenges till that time. I did my law from Campus Law Center. I did not face too many challenges there as well. The first challenge that I actually faced was when I started working. I joined an organization, started working there. And the environment around was not a very happy and healthy one for women to be able to grow and thrive. The option available to me was to leave the organization or to face the challenge. I opted for the second one, to be able to fight and face the challenge. Because how many organizations can you keep changing to be able to find the environment which is best suited for you? So I chose to stick to the organization, fight through my space and way, and be able to stand myself. That was first challenge, which was within the organization. The second challenge that came was being a first generation lawyer. When you are going to courts, to be able to stand yourself, make a name for yourself, becomes a little more challenging than others who have the privilege of the family background. So what really helped was determination, grit, constant hard work. Never leave anything for the God to do. You have to complete your task yourself. Have the drive and motivation to improve upon the services. Geared myself with the newer technologies, adapt to the technology, adapt to the new laws which were coming, understand what exactly, where are we standing in terms of laws, how do we implement it, all of those challenges that were there. Third challenge, and the biggest challenge, was the clients who were not confident about handing over their matter to a women lawyer. And they had their own reasons for doing it. I would not blame them for that. But they had their own reservation about handing over a matter to a woman. In fact, in one of the candid conversations I had with one of the clients, I wanted to understand why. Why would you do that? Do you think that women are not capable of being able to handle your matters, or what exactly is the reason? And what was told to me was, women do not take their profession seriously. They tend to leave everything half the way to attend to their family obligations and responsibilities. And that is when we as clients are left in the lurch. And that is why it is very difficult to build the trust on women lawyers. I said, would a man lawyer not do the same thing? If there is an urgency in the family, would it not be the responsibility of both men and women of the family to attend to that emergency? So how can you attribute that emergency to a woman's inability to be able to handle that assignment or role? Well, I can keep arguing about it with clients, but the fact of the matter is that there are reservations which are existing in the minds of the clients. It took almost about decades of hard work for women to have been given the faith that they can survive and sustain and thrive. And it also took some time for the clients to understand that this lady who's going to stand with me is actually ready to fight the battle with me for me. And that perception that they carried about women being a softer sex, or they do not have the capacity or the ability to be rough, to be able to be coarse, and to be brutal as the legal profession demands. I think those are the kind of misconceptions which slowly started to evaporate. And that is when slowly, I think now the scenario has changed quite a bit. I do not think there are too many clients who'd be looking at my gender to decide whether to assign a work to me or not. But that has taken a long journey of hard work, of perspiration, of constantly being there, constantly attending to the problems of the client 24/7. So if we look at or read the stories also of women like Cornelia Sorabji, the kind of challenges that she would have faced then, who became the first women to practice law in India, which was way back in the 19th century. In fact, it took almost 2 decades for her to be able to practice law in India. So from that time to now, I think there has already been a paradigm shift. And therefore, I think we are the privileged ones who are in an environment where the scenario is much better for women like us to be able to stand ourselves. There is another challenge that I have seen that women have is the leaky pipeline. And that is because the women lawyers actually at some point of time do succumb to the needs of their family responsibilities, their maternal responsibilities, and slowly and gradually have moved out of the profession. Because balancing the family responsibilities with the professional responsibilities were found to be really challenging. This profession demands 24/7 attention, and your family, of course, also demands 24/7 attention. So I think what really worked for me in that I can talk about myself is to get the alignment from the family members, to get their support, and also to make the organization where I'm working understand the balance that is required between the two. While I'm committed to the profession 24/7, I'm also committed to my family, and therefore that balance is the best yin and yang that we can create to be able to be successful. So giving into either of the two demands is not the right balance. And therefore, I think there is a perfect balance between the work and the home needs which is required. Many women have also opted for getting into in-house roles. And in fact, in today's time, if you look at the number of women who are handling the in-house roles and responsibilities with so much of conviction and aplomb, is really heartening. It is also very heartening to see the women judges who have been now, getting elevated to the high courts and supreme courts, and even lower judiciary for that matter. If you look at the higher and lower judiciary, I think there are quite a lot of women who have now got their entry, and it really feels good to see them doing so well. So I think what is important for us women is to understand that it is necessary to be there, to stand up and not give in to the pressures, to the challenges. and we have to find our way out. We have to find our space. We have to find the right balance to be able to push ourselves, succeed in our careers, and not give in to the demands of the hazards or the kind of challenges that we face within the society. And all of us as society also have to ensure that the young women who are getting into different professions, for that matter, feel safe, not only outside of their office but also within the office environment. And that is the responsibility collectively of all of us. And unless and until we are able to achieve that, I think we would have failed as a society. So what is next for women, which is likely to come? I think the best scenario possible for the future of women would be where we are not looked upon as a gender, where we are looked upon as a human being who's capable of achieving what they have set their eyes on. When we become gender neutral in terms of our approach to encourage only quality without there being any kind of a bias, without there being any kind of a discrimination. That is the kind of society that we have all to create. And that is what we must all strive for. Now, I can go on talking about it, but I would really like to address some of the questions if anybody has in their mind, so that we are able to keep it more interactive. Otherwise, this one-way monologue sometimes, it really doesn't help anybody. So if you have any questions, please feel free, unmute yourselves, ask the question. Otherwise, I can keep talking about, the challenges of my life, which in terms of instances are too many. But then, I would be happy when we are keeping it interactive, we are discussing the issues more one-to-one in terms of what challenges do you face within your institution, within your family, within your internships, whenever you would have done, and what are the kind of challenges and how did you address them? I think that is where probably our collective effort would be to ensure that we are a successful society. Anybody who would want to share their thoughts or concerns or challenges that they have faced?
Priyanka, you may invite questions.
I'll request all the attendees that if they have any question, they can write it in the chat box. I will read those questions.
Yeah, that will be good.
Yeah.
By the time Priyanka gets some questions from the participant, I would like to, be the icebreaker. Ma'am,
Sure.
as your narrative was heart-touching, and you are a role model for all of us, not only girls, even for male also. So, and to my understanding, not only girls, even boys also face similar challenges
Yeah.
in all professions.
Yes, that's
So,
right.
I would like to ask one thing, that sometimes family is pulling an individual back
Yeah.
because that individual is not able to devote as required time for the profession, and as you told, teaching also requires 24/7 attention,
Correct.
because every profession needs our complete focus and commitment.
That's
How
true.
you manage that your family is behind you in all this tough journey?
Actually, we shared the responsibility. The responsibility of domesticity was shared equally between both of us. And we had, of course, helps are there, but then ultimately it was between the two of us. So I have seen a scenario where my children would be sitting in office, and they have literally grown up within the office environments, that they would both be sitting in my room and I would be working till late night. Sometimes there were late night requirements, and we would be sitting in our offices completing an assignment, and the children would be sleeping in their respective prams. So the journey has not been an easy one, and I do not think that it will ever be easy for anybody who really wants to succeed. And especially if you have a certain amount of determination in your mind, you would want to overcome all of these challenges. So one part of it was, of course, I had a very supportive spouse, and the most important aspect of anybody's success, for that matter, whether it is men or women, is that you need to have an integrated family and a very supportive spouse. So that is probably the first challenge. And then the second is to align. I mean, the children also would have their demands. So we aligned the children, we aligned the family members, we aligned the in-laws who were who'd come and stay with us. That these are the kind of professional challenges that we have within our house, and we had a request to them to be able to either support or at least not be demanding, because our timelines and our time constraints and time pressures were always there. And I think unless and until we align all of these together, it was not possible for us to be able to achieve what we did. And that goes, I think, for both men and women. That has nothing to do with one particular gender. Why we stress more about women being responsible is only because of the fact that ultimate responsibility of bringing up a family still bestows on women, because she is she's a birth giver and therefore a natural caretaker for the child. And therefore probably that is why the society looks up to women to take care of the house and family and the children's responsibility. But over a period of time, when the times have changed, I think men are equally responsible for taking care of children. And I would definitely talk about at least my family, where I have got 100% support from the spouse. And that is how I was able to probably take care of my professional responsibilities as well.
Ma'am, I would like to read questions of the attendees with your
Sure.
permission. The first question is by Shreya Sharma, student of second year. Ma'am, if I talk about the opinion of people regarding the problems they face even today, but generally, many say that today women have become strong than men, and you can see women dominating women. And we can see many false complaints and all in PWDVA 2005, that is Domestic Violence Act 2005, and under other laws. So they think that in today's world, a need isn't there to consider them lagging behind, which we know isn't true. Though women have come forward in some areas, but still there's a long way to go. So, what will be your call or answer to such an opinion?
Actually, till the time we allow the people's opinion to matter, it matters. I stopped considering people's opinion to be of any relevance till the time I experience it myself. So what people say, what people think is really inconsequential till the time the situation really changes for women. And I can say it with authority that we have come a long way, but there is still a long way to go for us to make a society which is gender neutral. I talk about gender neutrality in that sense, that we have to stop talking about men or women. We have to talk about the professionals. We are when you are churning the students from Sharda University, you are churning professionals. You are not churning women lawyers and men lawyers. So I think we have to start talking about gender neutrality, and therefore we have to talk about a scenario or a society which is completely gender neutral, where we are able to balance both of the genders equally, without considering there to be any lopsided law in favor of anybody. In fact, I'm not in favor of having laws which are too pro women or too pro men, because that is where we create a certain amount of imbalance. So if we are able to take collectively the responsibility as a society to make the society safe, I don't think there would be a separate laws required for the safety of women. Unfortunately, that has not happened, and we have seen series of incidents which have occurred, because of which we had to promulgate these laws on domestic violence or on sexual harassment, or had to tighten the IPC. So all of this is because of the various factors that our society has built in. So unless and until that is taken care of, probably we still are not in a safe zone.
Ma'am, second question is by Dr. Manvendra Singh. What do you think are the barriers to access education for girls in India, and how can we overcome these challenges?
I think the first barrier, as I spoke about, is that the conservative mindset of our families, our parents, who think that if you send the girl child for education, which will be a co-education, then they do not like it, the girl and the boy sitting together. That is the first societal challenge. Second is that if the girls, I think it is an old mindset, but it still prevails, is that if the girls are too educated, they probably will not find the right groom to get married. And third also is that the domestic responsibilities at home also push them to stay at home and not go out for education. Besides these three, there are also other challenges which are relating to the basic facilities that are not available in our schools for women. And why to talk about schools? I mean, as a matter of fact, even in courts, I have gone to so many courts, district courts especially. Like in one of the matters, I had to go out of Delhi to a district court because the matter was considerably of importance for our client. And I realized that one, I was one of the very few women lawyers around, and so I was looked at like in like an alien who had come to that court. That was first. Second was that in the whole day that I spent in that court, there was not a single toilet for women. Not to talk about bar rooms. That was a separate aspect altogether. There is no bar room for women. Is it was like a given thing. But then there was no separate toilet. So imagine the kind of scenario that we have. So if even in schools that is the kind of situation we still have, then it becomes very difficult for parents to have the conviction to send their girl child for education. I think these are the kind of challenges that we have. How do we overcome these is only by, of course, as I've been saying, that we as a society collectively will have to work towards ensuring that these issues are actually taken care of. Whether it is about building sufficient toilets, I think Modi ji has been focusing a lot on that aspect, or making the environment safe for the girls also to be able to attend school. And it is slowly started to change the mindset also of people, but it will of course take a lot of time. I must tell you this one instance, and this is important for me to share here, is that my mother, she is a family of 11, and she was the fourth girl child in the family of 11, and there are about seven girls and four boys, nine girls and two boys, sorry, let me correct. And she was the first one to start her education. She came from a family background of farmers. So, a girl child studying in a village who's a daughter of a farmer in itself was something which was unthinkable in those times. And I'm talking about the 60s when she would have started her education. She completed her education, and then there was no school for her higher education in that village. So she had to now compulsorily go out. Her father was not equipped to understand the fact that a girl child also can go for higher education. But then there were people from the neighborhood who supported her, and thankfully so, because she had actually topped the class 10th exam, the metric exam that was there. And so she got the support of the neighbors to be able to go out to study. She completed her BA, her MA from Patna University in those times. And the background is important, that she's a farmer's daughter and that she's the fifth in the family of 11 children, and fifth girl child for that matter. They only had girl child before her, and only the male child also came after her. So in those kind of background, to be able to complete her BA, MA, and then join a profession. She joined the profession of teaching. My parents are both into academics, so my mother joined the profession, and then the challenge started for my nana and nani, that they were not able to find the suitable groom for her because she was overly educated by that time. So so those were the times, and we have seen the time having changed over a period of time, and I'm sure the collective effort of the society is going to overcome these challenges, Manvendra ji.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is by Spriti. We see that in our society, women are largely discriminated by women. They are told by their mothers and other women in the family not to enter the temple during menstruation, not to go out alone, and stay out late, etc. So the rule of law is fine, but how do we make our citizens, especially women, to respect it?
That is true. And I completely agree to this fact that I think it is not the other gender who's the real challenge for women. It is they themselves who are the real challenge. Even when she's a child, I mean, if she says no to the sex determination or the gender determination test, there is nobody in the world who can compel her to do so. So at some point of time, it is the first stage, which is the mother who agrees to get the gender determination test done. And after that also, when it comes about, the killing the fetus if it is a female child, that also at some point of time, I think there is an acceptance, or there is an agreement that the mother also has for whatever reason. But then look at it from this perspective, that this issue has been going on for generations, and to change the mindset overnight or over a few years is not going to be easy. I think it will take a few decades of our hard work and constant push that the mindset will change for women. Like when my mother was working, there was no way I could have thought of not being a working woman. I have always seen the environment around where a woman is working and balancing her family life as well. So as and when women start to work, they come out, they get educated. I think the whole mindset will change for them as well, and they will start becoming more accepting of women professionals within their houses. And that is how the scenario is going to change. So we will have to, of course, I mean, let the society take its course, but we have to become the role models and change the mindset of the women in the house.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is by Anirudh Tyagi. How do you see the act of rejection of permanent commission by Armed Forces Tribunal even after the verdict in any Nagaraj case?
I think this will be a separate topic for discussion on some other day, because I'll then take 1 hour to talk about this issue, because this issue is very relevant, Anirudh, and it probably will digress us also from our discussion at some point. Though I think there are reasons for the judgment which was passed, and there still is that reason that the government also holds, that why should there be lesser women, and why should the women not be allowed in certain parts of the armed forces tribunal. They have their own reasons for it, and probably I will have a separate session on this someday.
Sure, ma'am. Ma'am, next question is by Dr. Ritu Gautam. She's saying, thank you so much, ma'am, for the wonderful thought provoking session. I think our society is still not ready to handle an empowered, educated, and working woman. What do you think on that? How to bring the social change?
I think I have already answered this question, because how do we bring social change is also by becoming the change ourselves. When we become the torch bearers of that change, I think we will change the generations that are going to come. So my mother will pave the way for me, and that is how I'll pave the way for my daughters, and that is how probably the generations are going to change. So this is going to take its own course only by becoming the example for what we want in the society to see. So we'll have to, of course, fight our battles to be able to become that torch bearer of change, and that is the only way of success. I see there is no other way we can bring in the change. And I think you, Priyanka, you are also one of those torchbearers who have shown a way for the students of Sharda Law School on how from becoming a student to becoming a faculty, and a very successful faculty at that, how you are bringing about that change. And that is the kind of change that will inspire so many other women students who would also want to follow your footsteps and become a successful faculty at your institution and other institutions as well. So I think it is the journey that we have to keep in mind, and this journey is never going to be an easy one. No journey is easy. And when I think about the kind of journey that Cornelia Sorabji would have taken at that point of time in 19th century, when she had to find her space and be able to fight the society to even enter the bar, from there on to now, I think we have really covered a long way. And I'm sure with our all our collective effort, we will be able to really succeed and be able to bring that change that we are wanting in the society. And I would also want to just touch upon this one article that I read today morning, and that is that one of the girls have been made the CM of Uttarakhand for a day. Shrishti Goswami, she is a Haridwar girl, and she has been made the one-day CM of Uttarakhand. So I think the effort of the society is already to let the women be where they deserve to be. It is just about I think all of us collectively taking these steps in the right direction and pushing ourselves to be able to reach where we are required to be. So because if you look at the kind of policies, the programs that the government has come up with, there is no lack of effort or initiative from the government side. But then unless and until we bring about the mindset change in the society, it will be very difficult for for a girl child to survive, to be able to protect herself from the sexual and physical exploitation, from discrimination in all the forms that she has within their field of education, whether it is in their organizations where they choose to work. The struggles are there, but then we will have to find a way. Until the time we do that, we cannot rest and sleep.
Yes, ma'am. These all were the questions.
So thank you so much for inviting me into this very important topic on the rights of girl child. I think I just wanted to touch a little bit upon the life and the journey that I have seen. And the life and journey for you as you enter the profession is not going to be an easy one. So I think all of you should brace yourselves up for a lot of hard work and to make a way for yourselves without considering yourself to be a softer gender or a weaker gender. I think just keep that thought out of your mind. Be a professional, because that is one thing which is critically required, whether it is a male or a female, when you are entering the profession, to be committed to your profession. So when we say be a professional, I think it is about the professional commitment that you require to give, the hard work that you require to give into the profession. And I think there is nothing that can stop you if you have these two elements, the commitment, the hard work within you to succeed. And also, I mean, while we are talking about the safety and everything else, I think it is all of us also who are equally responsible for our own safety. So take all the safety precautions that are necessary, but don't let these issues come in the way of your success. I think that is one thing which is very important, whether it is, within your institution where you would be facing some stalker or somebody, who's been harassing you. I think raise the voice for yourself. It is very important to raise the voice, and it is important to raise the voice at the right time with the right people. Not make a noise, but raising the voice. So that is where the difference is. So if you are raising the voice at the right time with right people, you will see the right results coming. So do not stop yourself from succeeding because of your gender. Do not let yourself be pulled down because of your matrimonial and because of your family pressures. And there will be too many, because it's not easy when you start the journey. You have your family responsibilities also beginning just that time, and your professional responsibilities which also have started to catch up. So don't give up at that point of time. That is what my piece of advice for all the women who are entering the profession is. Do not give up at any point of time. I think that is my piece of advice. Never give up.
Ma'am, you have been very candid and very forthcoming, very balanced. No sides you took, and you told from your experience, from your wisdom. And I am sure your session will help a lot, all of us, not only women, girls, even male also. And as far as personally, I'm seeing that the future is very bright. In whichever selection committees I am, whether it is a student coming in, I prefer girls. If it is a faculty, given a choice, I always prefer female faculty because they perform far better.
Yes.
But and your advice will certainly help them grow professionally.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts, Dr. Kulshrestha.
Thank
And
you, ma'am.
with this last three P's that I always talk about is patience, perseverance, and persistence. I think that is something which is the key to success in any field. Just keep that motto on.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now I would request Dr. Manvendra sir to please extend his vote of thanks.
Honorable Ms. Shweta Bharati ma'am, respected Professor Dr. Pradeep Kulshrestha sir, respected colleagues and my dear students, It's my privilege to propose a vote of thanks. I, Dr. Manvin Singh, on behalf of Sharda University and on behalf of all the students and on my own behalf, extended my vote of thanks, heartful vote of thanks. Respected men, your presence were really enlightened with your thoughts, and what a very wonderful interactive session with you. And you, such a beautiful manner, you answered all the questions of the students. I would like your thank you to respected Dean sir for the enthusiastic support. A special thanks to organizing committee, Ms. Priyanka ma'am, Pawan sir, and our 24 into 7 available technical staff, Sudesh ji, Pragati sir, and Rishu ji, and all the students. I'm also looking forward on the behalf of School of Law that we will also in connect with you for the future upcoming events, ma'am. Thanks a lot. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a good day, everyone.
Good day, ma'am, and
Good day to you
day in
too.
advance to
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Thank
It was
you.
such a pleasure being here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for my precious time.
Thank you.
This will help all of us. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Priyanka. Very
Thank
good
you so